Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be doing a solo mode review for Coloma from designer Johnny Pack and publisher Final Frontier Games. I want to go over a couple of things. First off, I'm going to talk about what components have been added or removed to the game. Then I want to talk a little bit about how the actual gameplay switches for the solo variant. Finally, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to talk to you about the experience, the solo experience that I had. And then finally, I'll go ahead and give you my overall impression of the game as a solo game. So let's head over to the table, take a quick look at the components and gameplay changes, and then I'll come back here and tell you what I think. Okay, so in terms of components for the solo variant of Coloma, there's nothing that's actually removed. There are some things that are added specifically for solo play. In this case, we've got our 5 Barker cards, which are actually used in the 2-player game. In the solo game, they are also used just slightly differently. You need to have 4 hotel cards, which is a variant in the multiplayer game, but in the solo game, you do have to have that included, those 4 hotel cards. You're also going to have 4 wagon movement tokens. You're going to have a coin with a head and tails. There's the heads, and there's the tails. In terms of setup, the only real difference is that you're going to have a tent in Sam, which is the name of your opponent. You're going to have a tent in Sam's color, which in this case I'm setting up as red for Sam, and I would be playing as purple in this example. And so you have a tent there and there. You're going to have, just like in the 2-player variant, you're going to have a non-player color. In this case, I just chose yellow in the shootout area, and everything else is set up as if it were a 2-player game. You're going to have Sam's wagon in Coloma, just like you'll have your own wagon in Coloma, and everything else is as a 2-player game. So, what changes in terms of the gameplay? Well, the major difference is going to be in how you resolve this action wheel, all right? So, what's going to happen is before your turn, every time before your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to shuffle up these Buster cards, and you're going to choose 2 randomly off the deck. You're going to reveal 2. In this case, we've got 3 and 4, all right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to place your Pioneer as normal, knowing that Sam is going to go to one of those 2 spots. They're either going to go to 3 or 4, so there's a danger if you choose 3 or 4 that that spot is going to bust. If you wanted to play it safe, you can go to 1, 2, or 5, and you know that you're not going to have to worry about it. You know you're going to get generally speaking, you're going to get a boom action as well. But maybe you really need to go to 3 or 4. So let's say I really need to build this turn. I'm going to go to 3 anyway, taking a risk. Once you've placed your Pioneer, then you're going to flip this coin. If it comes up heads, then that's where Sam's going to go. He's going to go to the left card. If it comes up tails, they're going to go to the rightmost card, which is 4. So I flip it. It is tails. In this case, perhaps I lucked out unless I had a card that wanted 3 to bust, but they're going to go to 4, all right? And so that's what you're going to do every turn. You place your Pioneer, then you find out where Sam is going to go, and then you resolve your turn as per normal. Now, Sam is going to take out actions depending on where they go that are going to be slightly different, as you might expect, than in the solo game, or excuse me, than in the multiplayer game. So let me just talk quickly about the common and boom actions for each spot. The common action in Site 1, if Sam goes there, is that they're going to immediately gain a victory point for every gold nugget that's missing from the supply there. So in this case, there are 2 gold nuggets missing. Sam would immediately gain 2 points on the track. Most of the points that Sam will gain will be in-game, which is slightly different than the multiplayer game where you're going to get a lot of points at the end of the game. Here, not as much for Sam. If they're able to take the boom action as well, they're going to immediately gain a victory point per every barrel and horse in their supply. They can have up to 6 horses like a regular player, and they start the game with 1 horse in their supply. So in this case, they would have gotten 2 points for the gold that was missing and 1 point for the 1 horse in their supply. They can obviously gain more horses, which will give them more points. If they go to Site 2, they are going to gain either a river or a bridge tile and immediately gain 6 or 12 points accordingly. So if they don't have a river tile, they'll take that first and go ahead and gain the 6 victory points. If they get both, if they get the bust action as well, they're going to take both. They're going to take a river tile and they're going to take the top leftmost available bridge tile and score 18 points. So in this case, They'd get both of those. Those would be out of the game, and they'd get another 18 points to add on to their total. Okay? In spot 3, Sam's going to take a hotel building and immediately score 12 victory points. So there are only 4 of these in the game. Obviously, that means that now there's one less for you to potentially get and gain points from. And also, it gives them a nice big boost of 12 victory points there. The boom action is that they'll gain another 6 victory points, so they could potentially get 18 victory points from that one spot. Site 4 is where the movement of the wagon comes into place. And so the common action here is that you shuffle up these movement tokens, you flip one over, and you find out where the wagon's moving to. In this case, it's moving to Hangtown. So you pop it over there to Hangtown. These are going to get reshuffled the next time that happens. The boom action for 4, if that was not busted, is that they immediately gain 2 more gold nuggets. And as we know, in spot 1, they're going to get points based on the number of gold nuggets missing, and they never return those gold nuggets. Sam just keeps accumulating those gold nuggets. They never get spent. And so that becomes almost exponential as things goes on. In site 5, what happens there is that Sam pitches a tent in every frontier land that they're adjacent to. So in this case now, if they're in Hangtown, they'd place a tent right there, which is going to be endgame points for them as well. The boom action there is to fill a row at the shootout with Sam's gunmen, and they're always going to choose the smallest vacant row. In this case, they'd go right there. Okay? They're going to resolve at the end of the round. Sam is, just like the player will, and just like the non-player will, that all has to get figured out. If Sam happens to go to wherever the Barker tile is, let's say they went to 5, and that's where the Barker tile was, now they're going to have a slightly different action. They're going to gain a horse to their supply up to 6. And then the boom action is that they're going to take the rightmost available barrel from the stash, and then they're going to add 2 more outlaws to the shootout. So this is a way that you have to account for the shootout. You're not the only one that's potentially adding outlaws to the shootout. Sam can as well whenever they land on that Barker tile if they get the boom action for it. All right. In the shootout phase, as I mentioned, you have to account for them as well as the non-player character. The only events that ever trigger for Sam are, as you might expect, where they started the game with their tents in spot 2 and in spot 5, where in spot 2 they gain 2 gold nuggets from the board's gold supply, if available, and in event 5 they're going to spend 2 gold nuggets and immediately gain 6 victory points. That is actually, I have to amend myself, that is one way that the gold nuggets will get back to the minecart, is if they actually spend them for event 5. Otherwise, they kind of hoard those. All right? The only final scoring that you have to account for Sam are those tents in the frontier lands over here. All right? That's the main changes to gameplay in the solo mode of Coloma. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of the basic differences in the solo gameplay of Coloma versus the multiplayer game. Those added components, and how the different action spots work for Sam, your virtual opponent. So what is the solo experience like? Well, first, I like to talk about win conditions. This is a solo variant where you have a clear win-loss condition against a virtual opponent, and especially in a Euro-style game like this, I really prefer that to a beat-your-high-score type of a variant. And I gotta tell you, in Coloma, you really feel that increasing pressure of the points that stack up in-game from Sam, that virtual opponent. In the regular multiplayer game, many of the points are going to be gained at the end of the game. And so this is a very different feel. You see those points just steadily going up the track there, and it creates a really nice tension of, have I prepared myself well enough, not only in my own end-game points, but in the points that I've been able to accumulate throughout the game to be able to kind of catch up to Sam at the end of the game. So I really do like that. There is very much a nice multiplayer experience in the solo game for Coloma, and I think it does that very well. I also like to consider setup and teardown when I'm talking about a solo game. Many times that can be the difference on whether I get a game off the shelf or not. The setup and the teardown is not too arduous in this game. It is a Euro game that has a large number of components, and so that certainly is something that's going to be taken into account. It's not a little dice game that I can get up and set up and play in 2 to 3 minutes. This is probably more like 10 to 15 minutes setting it up and tearing it down. However, the experience that I get is commensurate to the amount of time that I'm putting into the game, so I don't feel like I'm spending more time setting it up than I am actually playing it and making informed and considered decisions. So I think that the ratio of time between setting up and tearing down versus actual good, crunchy gameplay decisions, it's a good ratio. It's one that I feel comfortable with. The rules. In a solo game, oftentimes the rules exceptions can be a bit arduous, and you almost feel like you're learning two separate games. I never feel that way here in Coloma. There are some adjustments on each of those action spots, but they make some kind of sense. They're usually some variation on what you're doing as a regular player. The other thing that I tremendously appreciate is that they have a separate booklet for the solo rules. It's well laid out. It's clear with examples for each of the spots and an example of scoring. And I think that this is something that more solo games should incorporate. Oftentimes they append it to the back of the rule book, or worse, will try to insert throughout the actual rules how the solo game changes from that. That can be extremely confusing to myself, and I really appreciate having this separate rule book. I think it makes things so much easier. It's very clear. I don't really feel like there are any ambiguities between how the solo game plays versus the multiplayer game, and so I think it does a rock solid job of incorporating the solo rules into the overall gameplay. Okay, what are my overall thoughts on the game? Well, Coloma in general has been a big surprise to me. This is a game that I really didn't know what to expect, and I have had a wonderful time, not only in a multiplayer experience, but in a solo experience. This is absolutely a game where the solo variant was carefully considered. It was not tacked on. You can tell that a lot of thought was put into it. However, it doesn't feel like you're playing a completely different game. You can really still get the core experience of what I enjoy so much about the multiplayer game of Coloma in the solo game of Coloma as well. And for all of those reasons, on top of the reasons I think that the game is solid to begin with, whether it's down to artwork or iconography or quality of components, quality of decisions, game length, all of those things I think are quite positive. I'm giving the solo variant of Coloma an 8. So there you have it, the solo mode review of Coloma. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.